Okay, looks like we're streaming. I'll get council to turn the cameras back on if possible. Be appreciated. So we can get this meeting running. Thank you very much. Officially like to call this meeting to order at 1:09 p.m. This is an electronic meeting held in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act. I'd like to note that all members of council are here and present. Thank you very much. And we have a number of senior staff as well. I also today want to acknowledge that we are on lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples, and Indigenous peoples have cared for this territory for the benefit of future generations. Their steward throughout the ages is certainly recognized. Thank you. Public comments for today's meeting were received at tmlpubliccomment@muskokalakes.ca. And just to note that we did not receive any public comment for that today. We do have a supplementary agenda and two items of note on our supplementary agenda. One of them is regarding item 5A. Mr. Serbak from Planscape is going to attend regarding item 9B3. And also we have a closed session item, which is item 11A, regarding some litigation or potential litigation. Okay, done that. Do we have any disclosures of pecuniary interest today, council? Seeing lots of shaking of heads, no nodding of heads, and the clerk has not been notified of anything differently. So we're good. We do have some delegations. They're scheduled at 2 o'clock, and we may work our way around those as we work through today's agenda. We have a number of items on our consent agenda. And I can probably just go, I think, straight to, is there any items in particular that councillor needed pulled out of our consent agenda and would have notified the clerk ahead of time? I don't think there was anything flagged, so we're good. So our first item of business is a motion moved by Councillor Bridgeman, seconded by Councillor Edwards, be it resolved that the Mayor and Council adopt and enact the following minutes and recommendations contained in the September 16th, 2020 consent agenda and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. The number of items: 1, August 6th, special council minutes; August 7th, committee of the whole; August 11th, committee of the whole; August 12th, general finance committee minutes; action items 1 to 3, August 12th, council minutes; August 13th, planning committee minutes; action items 1 to 4, August 18th, committee of the whole minutes; August 25th, committee of the whole minutes; and August 35th, or 31st, excuse me, I don't think we have a 35th in August 31st, special council minutes. We had a lot of meetings in August, in case anybody didn't notice. Any comments on any of those? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, that is carried. Thank you very much. Okay. I have another resolution here. Just make sure we're working on the right page. And 7A, notice of motion moved by Councillor Bridgeman, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that July 15th, 2020 Council Resolution C9-15-720 regarding the Muskoka Parry Sound Riding Cooperative Broadband Initiative be rescinded. And I'm not sure if we need much more clarity. I think Councillor Bridgeman wants to speak to this. Thank you, Councillor Bridgeman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to speak briefly to this, if I could. This was the motion we put in place in July to, I believe it was $1,200. I'd have to look back and see, but this is the combined initiative between Parry Sound and Muskoka to look at getting much better broadband in here. Consequent to that motion, the Parry Sound Muskoka Community Network has disengaged from that group, and that was where we were going to send our $1,200. So it is ourselves and all the other councils that passed a motion like this that need to rescind it. And if I could, Mayor Harding, consequent to that, the district, the Economic Recovery Task Force, has voted to go ahead and be an intricate part of this. And I spoke with David Sword, who is the leader of the broadband area, last week. Really interesting conversation. So at the end of it, I said to him, would you like to come to council and explain all of this to us? Because I think that would be really nice for everybody on our council, because we're all interested in broadband. And he said, I would be delighted to do that. So Corey, of course, Corey is our contact through all of this. Corey was already on that. So I'm not sure, Corey, if you've sent the invitation out yet or not, but we decided that council would be the best place next month for him to come, so everybody was sure to hear about how the initiative is going forward and answer questions, because unless you've been involved in it day to day, it can be not very clear. But so I think that's it. Thank you, Mayor Harding.
Thank you. Corey, did you want to comment, or you're okay? I think we're probably good.
No, I can just further to Barb's comments. We will, working with the CAO, will work forward to initiate that invitation through the district to come to council in October.
Okay, thank you. So we have a resolution, as mentioned, moved by Councillor Bridgeman and seconded by Councillor Roberts, and that is to rescind the prior resolution. Any further comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, that is carried unanimously. Thank you. That's great. We're going to move on to some of our management reports. We have a report from Ms. Guthrie regarding declaration of surplus lands, and then we're going to read some bylaws, I think, with it go along at the same time. Terry, over to you.
Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. These are two shore road applications which are coming to the end of the legal process. So the last step is to declare the land surplus and pass the related bylaw to sell the land. If you have any questions, I can answer them for you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Council, any questions on this? Okay, first one, moved by Councillor Hayes. Second by Councillor Kelly, be it resolved, a portion of original shore road allowance on Skeleton Lake lying in front of concession 1 lots 12 and 13 Cardwell, designated as part 2 on plan 35R 26186, and parts 2, 3, and 4 on 35R 26187, Thomas Munn rules 1, 2, 37, 38 be declared as surplus land, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of said property pursuant to section 8911 of the Municipal Act 2001. And further, the bylaw 2020-68 to stop, up, close, and convey these portions of original shore road allowance be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any comments? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So we have that. Then we have, is this a bylaw? No.
Yeah, it's a bylaw that was resulted from a report that Terry did, but there is no specific report. I can speak to.
Terry, if you want to introduce the next one, just a quick resolution, thanks.
Absolutely. Council may recall that a request came forward to acquire a portion of land. It was discussed and approved. All of the conditions were met and signed off by the Director of Public Works. So this bylaw to accept this parcel of land, add it to the municipal highway system as Sander Drive. And if you have any questions, I can answer them.
Okay. So I think we're okay. I'm just going to read the resolution moved by Councillor Mazan, second by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-78 to acquire part of lot 41, concession 7 would designate as part 1 on plan 35R 26299, and to establish said part 1 as part of the municipal highway system Sander Drive be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? There we go. Thank you. That's carried. We have Cranberry Road. Mr. Becking, do you want to introduce this one for us briefly?
Certainly, Your Worship. The volume of visitors to the Cranberry Farm out on Cranberry Road exceeds the parking capacity on the site. The owners of the Cranberry Farm are requesting that restrictions be placed on parking on Cranberry Road and Medora Lake Road in order to help to manage the situation. And staff are presenting a draft bylaw for your consideration.
Thank you. Council, any comments, questions? Resolution moved by Councillor Roberts, second by Councillor Zabitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-81 to amend bylaws 91-67 and 2020-53 to regulate and control parking Medora Lake Road and Cranberry Road be read a first, second, third time, finally passed. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Becking, we're over to noise control for Port Sandfield Bridge.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council is aware the district is proposing to rehabilitate and do work on the Port Sandfield Bridge during the nighttime hours in the latter part of in October and November. In order for them to proceed, they need relief from the township's noise bylaw. Staff have presented a draft bylaw for your consideration.
Okay. Council, any comments? We'll go right to the resolution. Moved by Councillor Bridgeman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-84 to provide an exemption of bylaw 2005-83 to control noise to the district municipality of Muskoka, Port Sandfield Swing Bridge be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? There we go. That'll hopefully shorten the amount of work required. They can work through the evening. We're going to go to Mr. Becking, community centers reopening. Ken?
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is further to the report that was presented at your August meeting. We're presenting for your consideration a plan to reopen 5 of the community centers in order to accommodate approved activities. You'll recall that at the last meeting there was a request put forward by members of committee or council rather to expand the number of openings so as to provide better geographic distribution of available sites. So a plan has been developed that will facilitate that. That having been said, any approved activities that would be taking place at that location could be accommodated within the originally proposed scheme. Regardless of the number of sites that you're proposing to open, staff will be putting in place some fairly strict protocols so as to ensure that to the extent that we are able, we don't provide an opportunity for people to become ill. If council grants its approval, we would propose to target November 2nd as the tentative opening date, but that of course would be subject to any changes or new requirements as imposed by the province of Ontario or the medical officer of health. That having been said, you should be aware that with the case count climbing precipitously and there is noise being made that further restrictions may be forthcoming, and you should keep that in mind. With that, Your Worship, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, through you. So I would like to add to the list. I would be getting a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails. Port Carling Arena is something that I've been getting just pounded on. And I wonder about the library too, at least the main library, and perhaps if Bala is one of the community centers contemplating being opened, could we include or fold in the Bala library as well? So a bit of about face, but I would ask that we could include the ice in the arena in Port Carling, and I wondered what council thought of that. Thank you.
I think that's going to become a council directive. Ken, did you want to comment how long it would take us possibly to put the ice in if we change our mind?
The report before you, first of all, Your Worship, speaks only of the community centers. There is the whole issue of the arenas is a considerable moving target at the present time. And that, frankly, there's simply not enough clarity to understand what even the rules and regulations are going to be. That having been said, if council were to direct that the arena or arenas be opened, it takes about a week to a week and a half to put the ice in and get things prepared. We have been preparing some tentative protocols that would allow us to respond and in an effort to try and maintain an environment of safety. It's entirely at the direction of council, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. I know the CAO wants to chime in briefly.
Thanks, Your Worship. So the approach that staff have taken was we were directed by council to come back with a report this month as it relates to community centers. I know that it was on Mr. Becking's work plan to come back with another report specifically dedicated at or to arenas. As he's indicated, there's a lot of moving pieces here. We now have an upsurge in cases. So hearkening back to our reopening framework plan, we're trying to take a very prudent, cautious approach as it relates to with the paramount goal or principle of protecting public health and safety. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. First off, I would say that I feel the need to open up our community centers. I stressed it earlier today, our senior citizens. However, I wouldn't be looking until January. Just historically, November is a brutal month period and in many are at least the members that live in my community that I am engaged with on a regular basis. It's not a really, really busy time. December gets to be busy because of family issues and things like that. My concern or question would be how particular locations were chosen. So for instance, in Ward A, we chose Bala. And it's interesting because the activities that happen at both Walker's Point and Torrance take into consideration a lot of those activities don't happen in Bala. And I don't know what activities we're going to be allowing in Bala, but it feels at this point that in fact we would be excluding our seniors. So I'm not sure how those decisions were made and how it could look different.
Ken, maybe some advice as to would we be combining activities into one community center? What's your thought process?
Your Worship, attached to the report is a schedule, a series of schedules actually, which demonstrates firstly what activities are scheduled across the entirety of the system. The second is the proposed schedule based on the recommended alternative. And the third would be a schedule if council wished to consider the recommended alternative plus 4 additional. As is demonstrated by the middle of the 3 schedules, we can accommodate the vast majority of approved uses within the 5 identified sites. They were picked, Your Worship, based on a geographic distribution and an ability to absorb the activities from other locations that would not be opened. But as I've indicated earlier, if council wishes to open up additional sites, that too can be accommodated.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor Hayes.
Just to circle back to Councillor Zavitz's comments, the main library branch is open for curbside pickup, and they are having outdoor programs. They've had their first seniors program outdoors with 19 people. The Bala branch is located inside the community center and will open whenever it's deemed that the community centers are safe to open, not before that. And yes, Walker's Point is hoping to be on the list of community centers that is open for 2 days a week.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, can you hear me? Sorry. Yes, good. So I think it's going to be a very difficult, this is going to be a moving target, whether it's one community center in each of the 3 wards or however one establishes. Clearly, I think there's an established need. Certainly there's a cautionary note. I would presume that staff is well aware of the activities that would be allowed. I read the report. So within that purview, if we opened up 3, or 5, or how the libraries work, and hence I have heard from the library folks that they'd like to open up more. And again, with an abundance of caution, I think that's what we should be discussing in terms, perhaps it's numbers, not so much what's going to happen in there, but the numbers of community centers. Where are they? How does that look? Thank you.
Councillor Bridgeman, or Councillor Kelly first, and Councillor Bridgeman, excuse me.
Okay, thank you. And through you, just a couple of thoughts. I think it's really important that we find a way to get as many of these pieces of infrastructure open for our constituents as quickly as we can. The community centers and the libraries, and especially the libraries, and maybe even the arenas, are more than just a pile of bricks and mortar. They represent an opportunity and a community. It takes what's the old saying? It takes a lot of hands to build a community, or to build a town, but it takes a lot of heart to build a community. These are the heart of our community. We've got people who have been locked away since March. And, if you're not in the blessed group who are able to avail yourself of waterfront property, you had a hell of a lot to do. And I'm very afraid that we are sliding towards another lockdown. I'm not afraid of getting sick, but I'm afraid of the mental and the physical well-being of our constituents who need this opportunity to see some hope, to see some normalcy, and to get get the lace on the skates, or go do something physical, go meet with people with a socially distant, issue, respecting socially distant rules. I understand that the arenas are open in both Humphrey and Mactier right now, today. We can go skate there if we want to. So I don't understand what obstacles, other than obviously scheduling and timing, we need to overcome to get our arena or arenas open. I know for a fact that both the Canadian Figure Skating Society, or whatever the governing body is, and the OMHA have already come up with their rules of protocol to govern or regulate how activity is to be played under their auspices. We've got people pent up and ready to go, and I think we're letting them down if we aren't finding a way to get this done as quickly as possible. And so I really advocate for that. And I realize there's a risk that we spend some money and open a facility only to find out in October or November that we have to shut it down again. But we can't hide under the bed, wait for this to go away. We need to take this by the horns and go after it, make it available, take full advantage, subject to the provincial rules on distancing and so forth, and let our permanent residents and our visitors here see the opportunity to use these facilities. That's it.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bridgeman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe you all got letters from the users of the Peninsula Rec Center, and very strongly they want this reopened, and I agree with them. And I agree with reopening them. I'm just, in light of what's in front of us right now, I would very much support option 2, and we can start with those 5 centers and see what happens, and maybe move to all of them, and then independently look at the arenas. So I just, I very much would like to see option 2 put in place for our community. That they're worried about the winter and being socially isolated again, and I agree with that. So that's my comment.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Roberts first, and then I'll circle back to Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I was probably the first councillor as a citizen to get something opened up in Muskoka Lakes, and it was the community gardens at Milford Bay. And I worked with Director Becking, and at that time, we were going back and forth, and I'm saying, oh, this is ridiculous and stuff like that. But since then, I've really learned how opening up centers, what kind of stress, workload is putting on both the community and our public works. So when you read through this report, it's just not a matter of opening the doors. I'll give you a small example. We have a very great exercise VON program. There'll be more than 50 people show up the first day because they've been sitting there. But what's that mean to Director Becking? Well, he's got to go in there and put X's on the floor for social distancing, or he's got to count on the people of VON to do it. And maybe it won't happen, but we are responsible. And there's a whole protocol. So I think what we need to do is take baby steps with this. I agree with opening everything, but let's go with these first group and see how it happens. I did call Annette McLeod to talk about the programs that we're opening up in Milford Bay, and there was a really great concern, like that what needs to be done and the risk. And then when I really got an appreciation from what we have ahead of us. So certainly, briefly, let's start with these 5. Then the next time, let's start with talk about the arenas, get Director Becking to come back with that, and sort of, so we can just move on from this.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Ishikawa, something further to add?
Thank you. Well, Gord had mentioned, and that's what my concerns were with the VON and the wellness center initiatives from the district. I know that I've attended many times both those functions over the years, and on average in the Ward A area, there's 10 to 15 people, closer to the 15 people that attend a VON class. All of a sudden, and also I should stress that the importance of having the vicinities in your community is that many of those folks that we initiated this program, and I'm going back to when I was a district councillor and we initiated these situations, we were trying to get those people that were essentially locked in their homes because they don't have transportation. I mean, we don't talk about transportation in Township Muskoka Lakes, but it is a huge issue. So now we're suggesting that if people want to take those courses, they drive from Walker's Point into Bala, which it's 15 minutes to get outside of Walker's Point, just to get out to the highway, which is not a big deal for some, but it's winter time and things. But then to get to Bala and find out you're not included in the class because there's too many people. And I don't know that, I really have a concern of where and how the locations of, so we already knew where the successful locations were for these things, and I just don't know that we are paying attention to that information right now. I sure don't want to send a message out there to show up for classes, but you may not be able to get in. Because that's a big deal. Like you're now, and you know, I have to go deal with my mother later this afternoon. Those stresses take them over the top, I'll just say. So I think we have to be aware of that and how we try to figure out where these classes are going to be.
Councillor Edwards, then Councillor Mazan. And then I'm going to try and move this forward. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. If we use caution in that, if people are going to the programs, there should be some way they have to register so they know there will be room for them rather than just showing up. That's one thing. And secondly, I think I read somewhere in there that maybe what we could do is have one of the ones at night and then just clean in at the next morning, so it wasn't causing staff time. I was thinking about Councillor Roberts saying about AA meetings, which would be in the evening. Maybe they could have it in the evening and then clean in the morning, something like that, and just see what the programs are. If we are opening up on November the 1st, and that it gives us time to check with the hall boards and just see what the best way. Everybody should be signing in so we have a tracking method if someone does get sick. So erred on the side of caution here, but if you would like them reopened, that's fine. But I think we should really have some real serious thought on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mazan, then Councillor Hayes, and then I'm going to cut this off. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, as somebody who's just recently sent all 3 of my children back to school, I can assure everybody that things are different. They're different for everybody, and reopening is going to look and feel different no matter what we do right now. But I do think it's really important that we find ways to do this for many of the reasons that we've been talking about, which is the quality of life for the people that we have in our communities. And, you know, I think that Councillor Edwards just brought up some very practical ideas and solutions. This COVID has created the conditions everywhere where everybody is having to rethink how they've been doing things. And this is an opportunity for us to do that too. So how we schedule protocols for signing up, and, you know, had we all talked about Zoom 6 months ago, I didn't even know that existed, and yet look at us now today. So some of the things that haven't happened in the past, I think will happen organically as we get through this. So with all that said, I am supportive of, I think it's the recommendation in Appendix 2, starting with the 5, recognizing that it's not ideal, right? And I assure you, nothing right now is ideal in any reopening, but at least we start. And then we have a plan to adapt to. And if adapting means our constituents want something different, then we will listen and we will adapt. If adapting means that we've had a further outbreak and we need to close for a period of time, then that is what we should do. But I really feel strongly it's not good for anybody's health for us to be putting yet another barrier up for them not to be able to get out of their homes and come out and do something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't speak for the other wards, but for Ward A, rather than Bala be open 5 days a week, could the 3 community centers share that 5 days? That way there's no more work for staff because they're only open for 5 days. That way we'd be able to have Walker's Point open for 2 days, Torrance open for 2 days, and Bala open for 1. I really understand Mr. Becking's dilemma because one size does not fit all. There are demands being made or requests, not demands. And it is a difficult situation. We want to go slow. We want to do it safely, but we do want to have the ability to be able to give everybody something. And the library cannot, the Walker's Point Community Library cannot move. The information that's there for the archive group that's in the small room cannot move. So there are certain groups that just, so if consideration could be given for that, rather than it be Bala, say Ward A is open for 5 days.
Okay. As everybody, my screen was frozen as well. I see some people moving. Can everybody hear me? I think so. Yes, generally. Okay. There is some computer issues going on here a little bit that were a bit frozen, but that's okay. I've heard a couple things, if I may. I think Councillor Shnier brought it up that she's more looking at January versus November. I think we all need to be cognizant of what's really going on provincially right now. Case numbers were back in August, we were all well below 100. Yesterday we hit 315 new cases. 250, I think, was the day before that. So we're back doing this for case counts, which will happen. There was a new case in Huntsville. Gravenhurst had a case recently. So it's here and it's coming back here. So I think everything we do needs to be done with an abundance of caution. The one thing with the resolution, as we see it today, so the concept is we are agreeing to open November 2nd, but we still have sort of 30 days or next month to sort of make some confirmation. But we can't change that if we approve that resolution as it is today, unless we put the words as approved by council, because once we state that this is going to happen, for us to change that, we need 60 days or two cycles to amend that. So I'm going to make a couple of recommendations, if I may, and I'll just kind of get the feeling of council on this. Do people have the resolution in front of them? Or maybe I'll get the clerk to share it. And we can screen share the resolution just so you can see what I'm talking about. I think this gives us a little bit of flexibility and a little greater understanding, knowing that November is a potential open. It may be pushed to December, maybe pushed to January. But I do understand Councillor Hayes's comment that Bala could be open for Ward A could be open for 5 days. And I think that might be interesting for the Ward A councillors to kind of come to an agreement, if you will, how you may want to sort that out. And if that works, I think that could be an amendment going forward. But the resolution as we see it, yeah, we're just scrolling through here. And I appreciate all the protocols and all the work Director Becking's gone through to get this here. So that's very much thankful. That's not the resolution I have. So, okay. So one of the things is that it talks about, now for be it resolved, the Township Council approves a partial community centers reopening on or about November 2nd, 2020. I would input or later, as directed by council, or as otherwise directed by council. Thank you. I think that gives us some flexibility. And then also the last line in that talks about community center reopening plan dated September 16, subject to additional requirements imposed by the province of Ontario or the medical officer of health. I think I would put a subsequent line in there, and confirmation from council in October 2022 or 2020. That just gives us a little bit of a 30-day understanding, and we could make some amendments, same as Councillor Hayes has suggested in Ward A. We're not locking ourselves in. We're just basically saying we're going to continue to refine this over the next 30 days and move the needle as required without limiting us, so that we can actually follow this approval. So those would be the sort of two recommendations I would make that just give us a little bit more flexibility. I see Councillor Kelly has his hand up, and also so does Councillor Edwards, and maybe we can go back to the full screen for me. So
Okay, excuse me, thank you, and through you, excuse me. We don't need to bring it back to council if, for extension of November 2, if the province or the regional chief medical officer decides to implement a ban or close things. The decision is made there by them on their conditions. And I can't frankly ever imagine where the township would view itself as more expert on epidemiology to make those decisions than they are. So I'm not sure why that needs that flexibility. That's number one. Number two, having already pronounced on this, and I assume both the province and the chief medical officer of health have done so, I'm not even sure why we need resolutions to open anything. We don't normally, to my knowledge, pass resolutions to open the arena in October of every year or September of every year. So why can't that just proceed? You know, that's what staff is here. They've got to take whatever steps are necessary and make sure we fit within the guidelines as described from time to time by the province or the chief medical officer.
Appreciate that, Councillor Kelly. Just a comment. You know, the province allows us to have the township offices open, but in an abundance of caution and doing business, we've chosen, council has chosen to follow staff's recommendations to keep the township offices closed. Our community centers could be open today, as long as we have limited gatherings. They can be playing cards, we could be doing whatever, but we're saying we want to take extra measures, and all this is doing is saying we're going to take extra measures. So it really does come down to a council decision, I believe, more so than the province. The province may put further restrictions. I'll let the CIO chime in a little bit.
Thanks, Your Worship. And I think this also harkens back to the framework of the strategy that with respect to reopening that council had passed back in July. The notion of looking at information and then proceeding in a cautious, prudent approach based on public health information. So what you're seeing is an approach Mr. Becking has put forward with respect to community centers that does that based on the best information that we have. You know, flexibility is probably something that we do want to have in the event that unforeseen circumstances happen between now and November.
Okay. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. I was just going to say, Mayor Harden, that I
Alan,
would
for some reason you're muted. I don't know why. You're not showing muted, but we can't hear you.
Okay.
Oh, I can't hear you. That's me. You can all hear it.
Okay.
I
Everybody
turned
else
off my
hear me?
speaker when Derek was speaking.
I'll talk louder. I was just going to say that I would support the mayor on this. I don't think that we have to say, and that November the 2nd. And just for someone's information, when I was reading through that, you can't play cards. And if you're exercising, you got to be 14 feet apart and everybody else like that. And I don't know too many people can deal 6 feet from a table and hit it. So cards are out and a lot of other things. So when we look at it, and that I would say that I would put that in that we will look at it in October, and we can change that date if we have to. And that because the problems may be shutting this down. This is serious, and I don't want to jeopardize anybody's health. And I know, and that Councillor Kelly can shake his head, but I'd like to keep people safe. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? We're just trying to do those quick little amendments. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, through you. I'm seeing Councillor Kelly shake his head. I share his concern. I do. I think that not to do an about face on Public Works, but I think at this point in time too, you know, ice in one arena, people skating for pleasure, for competition, for hockey, whatever it is. Why others do, and what, you know, we as an abundance of caution decide not to. That's fine. That's fine. We're not trying to put anyone in harm's way. And I'm hearing everything about how the doom and gloom. Sure, there's numbers up, but let's be honest, we all know where those numbers are coming from, and we do know the social behavior around them. So yes, there's someone in Huntsville. Yes, there's someone in Gravenhurst. One here, one there. I think that if we preach safety and the protocols associated with that, we could well open these, at least the arena, for its multiple purposes, and 5 arenas. As a Ward A, you asked me, as one of the councillors, I would be happy to defer to Councillors Nishikawa and Hayes in terms of a schedule to open those 3 community centers weekly. I'm fine with that. I think it's a great idea. What a great solution, as long as it doesn't cost us. And I wonder about the cost, but that's just that's a math question. Thank you.
Okay. Nobody's disagreeing that I think that we're going to ignore the advice of the province. We're not smarter than them in any way, shape, or form. But we have set a framework for reopening, and we're going to sort of follow that going forward. The amendments to this resolution don't theoretically change that, but it allow us to modify this as potentially needed. Because otherwise, when this council passes that we're opening on on November 2nd, depending, unless the province shuts us down, we can't shut ourselves down. They have to open. If we happen to have an outbreak in the community and a medical officer doesn't say shut it down, we don't have the ability to do that. So all the amendment's doing is it gives us greater flexibility within our bylaws. So I'm going to read this resolution, moved by Councillor Jagowitz, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Whereas Council approved a reopening framework that contained guiding principles to ensure the health and safety of the community. And whereas a reopening plan for community centers that respects the guiding principles of the reopening framework is contained in the staff report entitled Community Center Reopening Plan and dated September 16, 2020. Now therefore be it resolved that Township Council approves the partial community center reopening on or about November 2nd, 2020, or as otherwise directed by Council, based on the plan schedule contained in attachment 2 of the staff report entitled Community Center Reopening Plan and dated September 16, 2020, subject to any additional requirements imposed by the Province of Ontario or the Medical Officer of Health and or confirmation by Council in October of 2020. Any comments, questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. That is carried. And regarding arenas, I certainly understand that. And also again, from a Ward A in particular, if a flexibility within what opens. Mr. Becking, are you okay to bring us back in October, maybe some other guidelines or questions or comments in a report to look at opening our arenas, or an arena in particular, and or some flexibility in the community centers? I think we have some time in that.
Yes, Your Worship, I would be in a position to respond at that time.
Thank you very much. I think that'll answer Councillor Zabit's question. And again, that doesn't preclude anything in this one. It's an arena opening guideline and framework. So thank you for that. Where are we going? Sole purchase, automatic. We want spreader controls. We want to spread the sand and salt appropriately. Ken?
Thank you, Your Worship. As Council is likely aware, we have to follow a competitive process unless there are extenuating circumstances that preclude that possibility. There is only one supplier of spreader controls of the type that we already have, and there is a need for compatibility from one unit to the next. I am asking for Council's permission to proceed on the basis of a sole source. The amount is $47,580, which is consistent with staff, generally consistent with staff's estimate of what it should cost. And I'm satisfied that we are getting an appropriate piece of equipment at an appropriate price. But nonetheless, I require your permission to deviate from policy.
Okay, Council, any comments, questions? Okay, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that Township Council authorize the award of the sole source purchase and retrofit of 3 combination plow spreader units with CompuSpread CS550 spreader control system to Gen Corks Works, Mattawa, Ontario, or whatever their company is, in the amount of $47,580. In accordance with Section 2B of Township Policy CIO 13, Procurement, and Bylaw 2004-161, a bylaw to adopt a procurement policy. And further, the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the purchase. Any further comments? All those in favor? There we go. Thank you. Carried.
Thank you, Council.
We're going to go to our Fire Chief. Mr. Murrell.
Good afternoon, Council. You have in front of you a report that recommends the award of tender in the amount of $111,130 for the purchase of 10 SCBA, 40 cylinders, and 18 face pieces. There were 2 tenders of record that bid on this job, and you can see the result there. We are recommending that we award to the lowest compliant bidder. I stand ready for questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Council, any questions? None? The only question I have, do we sell our old stuff, or what do we do with the old equipment we have?
That's a great question. Our old bottles are, there's an absolute rule that you need to drill them out so that nobody else can use them, because according to Transport Canada, once they hit their 15-year life, which they will all do in 2023, they must not be reused. And our old SCBA, we can sell them, and we will explore that option. So that's a great question. It'll go through govdeals.com, and we'll recover whatever we can for them, and they can be used for confined space entry for other utilities.
Maybe they can be hooked up with N45 breathing apparatus, and we can supply them at our community centers if people want to go in. May work. Moved by Councillor Roberts, second by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that Township Council authorize the approval for the purchase of 10 self-contained breathing apparatus, 40 air cylinders, and 18 face pieces from M&L Supply Fire and Safety in the amount of $111,130 plus HST, with funds to be allocated from the 2020 approved capital budget. And further, the Fire Chief can be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the purchase. Any further comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Actually, I think more than community center, I think we should bring them in council when we all start to meet together. We can use them to social distance. Okay, thank you. Mr. Donaldson, we have a report regarding MDRAP funding.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we've received a transfer payment agreement from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing to access funding under the Disaster Recovery Assistance Program related to the flood. An application was filed last year related to those costs that were incurred. We are working with ministry officials in terms of what is required to dot I's and cross T's in terms of the items that were submitted. I do have some additional information that is not contained in the report, which I would just like to update council. So under the discussion section in the second paragraph, so the total amount of the transfer payment agreement is for a maximum of $1,090,522.64. And we have confirmed eligibility of costs incurred of $293, $639.10. The update is that based on the formula, the 3% of the municipality's own purpose taxation for 2018, which is $315,159.93, is the minimum amount of damage that must be claimed in order to access funds under the program. So we have not yet met that minimum. The flip side of that is we do have additional costs that are either been deemed ineligible or requiring additional information that takes us well above that minimum threshold. So we are just following up with the ministry to complete that task of getting those items that require additional information completed so that they will be deemed to be eligible, and then we will be able to access funds under the program. And that's being done expeditiously with my colleagues at the Department of Public Works to ensure that we have that, that work completed very shortly. So we currently have been identified by the ministry to have to be eligible to receive $215,925.16. Once we hit that minimum, we will be eligible to receive $236,369. That would be the floor, and then everything over and above that would be additional income for us. But I think the key point I want to make sure that council understands is we are still working with ministry officials in order to get our claim to the eligibility level that we need to have, which is 3% of the own purpose taxation levy for 2018.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to ask, and that the treasurer through you, with the Moon River Dock, has that been included or is that extra?
Sure, Worship. So there are several items that I would need to follow up on. There are several items that are still in flux in terms of whether they're eligible or not. So I will confirm that particular item on the application because I don't know immediately, but I will find that out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just I can answer that, Councillor Edwards. So that was on the application. The question is, we have to prove the condition prior and that the flood caused it. So that's some of the gray area that we're working on. But certainly that one dock alone would put us into that new category that enables us for flooding. So good question. Councillor Jagowitz.
Thank you. Through you to the director. Is it your considered opinion that we will qualify and do are these ineligible items just a technicality, or do you think that they will be disallowed completely?
Your Worship, to the councillor's question, I think that there are a number of items that require additional information that are reachable to make them eligible. For those items that had been deemed ineligible, I believe that those are closed and they've been adjudicated by the ministry. So, but there is certainly enough items totaling what is the gap to get us to the minimum as additional information required that will get us there. So I think the answer to your question is we should be able to reach the minimum with no concern. Whether or not we'll reach the maximum amount allowable under the transfer payment agreement is probably I would say unlikely, but we would certainly explore all options.
Okay, thank you for that. I think CIO would like to chime in. Dirk?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just further to Mr. Donald's comments and in response to the councillor's question, certainly staff will provide all of the information that we can with respect to each of the items. At the end of the day, it's going to be a call of the ministry as to whether or not they determine that information is what they're looking for.
I will also say that as we move forward, political will may come into effect as well, that Minister Clark has been very supportive of our communities, and as required, we can, if things happen to be potentially denied, we can lobby as well. Okay, thank you. So I have a resolution. That's moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-82 to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute and affix corporate seal to a grant agreement between the Township of Muskoka Lakes and the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing under the Management Municipal Disaster Recovery Assistance Program 2019 Spring Flood be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Unanimously. Flipping aside here. Thank you. Next item of business is our MPAC stuff. Mr. Donaldson, do you want to introduce it? I'm happy to introduce it, but I'll let you start and I can chime in as well, I guess.
Great, thank you, Your Worship. So, so as part of the AMO delegation meetings, we had an opportunity. I had an opportunity to sit in with the mayors of the municipal district and the district chair in terms of visiting our the billing that comes through from the district for MPAC fees. So MPAC does a recovery from all governments and all residents of the province for their operating costs. That billing goes to the upper tier and then is flowed through to the lower tier. But there is a change in the way that that fee is calculated when it's passed along to the lower tier residents, which makes those municipalities that have disproportionately higher assessment value than their counterparts shoulder a larger burden of that cost. So the appeal was made and well received by the parliamentary assistants, the Minister of Finance, that that we would like them to have a look at the mechanisms by which those costs are flowed to the residents to ensure the fairness to all residents across the province, and have those costs reflected as they are determined through the legislation that that is applied to the upper tier.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody have any comments, questions right now? Councillor Jaglitz. Still on mute, Frank.
I guess I have two questions, and one is who or what organization filed the appeal that's making this possible, because that's good news. And then does this then open the door to file a similar appeal for OPP costs?
I'll handle this one, I think, Mark. So the appeal, if you will, or the impetus of this started with myself. And I lobbied and had some discussion with my fellow mayors across the district to highlight some inequities that are going on as we talk about OPP billing. And this was one of them in particular that I was able to highlight and had buy-in from my fellow mayors across. And we unanimously took this to the province to say, hey, this needs to change. So they are in support of this. And this is also not just across Muskoka. I know Town of Blue Mountains has a similar issue. City of Mississauga has issues like this. But you've all heard myself talking that the more we can work with our fellow district councillors, the more we can affect change. And this is a prime example of us working. This, in round numbers, we'll put an extra $250,000 in the Township of Muskoka Lakes bank account every year. This one simple change. So we're working on many of these, and the idea is to get this passed and push it forward. We'll start working on some other ones. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, and congratulations.
Okay, anybody else have any comments? I'm going to read this resolution then. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Jagowitz. Whereas single and upper tier municipalities are required to pay annually for the services of the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, or MPAC, in accordance with Section 12 of the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation Act 1997, the Act. And whereas the formula prescribed under Section 12 of the Act used to calculate the annual payment gives equal weighting to the proportion of the total assessment on all property in municipality and the proportion of that total number of properties set out in assessment rolls returned in the municipality relative to the province of Ontario. And whereas the payment of these costs, when apportioned by upper tier municipalities, removes the equitable distribution contemplated under Section 12 of the Act, assessment by municipality and total number of properties introducing significant unfairness to the residents of the lower tier municipalities, which have disproportionately higher assessment values. And whereas the interest of fairness, lower tier municipal residents should pay an amount that is consistent with the formula as set out in the Act. And whereas this item was discussed with Parliamentary Assistant Stan Cho at the recent AMO conference with representatives from the District of Muskoka and all lower tier municipalities, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Muskoka Lakes requests the Minister of Finance to, number one, amend Section 12 of the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation Act 1997 to bill single lower tier governments directly pursuant to the current formula prescribed in the legislation prior to the 2021 MPAC billing cycle, or alternatively, amend Section 12 of the Municipal Property Assessment Corporations Act 1997 to direct those upper tier municipalities required to pay the prescribed amounts to distribute the cost to the residents of lower tier municipalities using the same formula currently prescribed in the legislation. Any further comments on this? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Once again, carried unanimous. Thank you. And I think it goes without saying that we will distribute a copy of this to the appropriate municipalities. And I also know that there's a number, the mayor of the town of the Mountains and I've had some conversations, and I think he should be copied as well. It's good for them. So thank you. Okay, we have some delegates at 2 o'clock. One of them is regarding a strategic plan review and an update. And I think I'm going to turn this over to the CIO at this point to introduce it, and then we can bring Chris on. I think Chris, is he in the meeting? We'll get your camera turned on because I think we're going to turn to you shortly. So Derek, over to you, and then to Chris.
Thanks, Your Worship. And this report is further to the sessions that we held in August with a view to revisiting the basic components of our strategic plan update. The report captures a summary of results of those meetings, as well as refinements to the engagement plan. So as the mayor had mentioned, Mr. Loreto is with us this afternoon and is anxious to take us through those pieces, as well as seek your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Chris, welcome.
Great.
Over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Your Worship. It's great to be with Council again today. What I'll do is I believe I can share my screen, or is it possible to share my screen? I can take us through what we came out with through the series of workshops.
It all depends what's on your screen, Chris.
It's nothing but clean stuff.
You should be able to share your screen right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just 1 second. There we go. Through you, Your Worship, what I do want to start with is the strategy architecture that came out of the series of 4 workshops that we did do in August, that encapsulates what was agreed to at those meetings, beginning with the mission, vision, values, and strategic goals. They're presented here on this slide. I think we have alignment on the vision statement as it was refined through those workshops, and it's presented here on the slide for folks, as is the mission. We refined the set of values through those workshops, and then we arrived at 4 strategic goals or pillars for this for the strategic plan in draft form to be taken out to the public. The first one being preserve and protect the natural and cultural environment. The second being strengthen and diversify Muskoka Lake's economy. The third being enhance and sustain public services and infrastructure. And the fourth being strengthen key relationships, particularly with the district and senior orders of government, and also colleague municipalities in your area. So maybe I'll just stop here, Your Worship, to ask councillors if they have any comments or concern about how we've distilled and put the draft together here on the four main components before I go into the strategic initiatives.
Okay, I'm not seeing anybody's hands up right now. So I think we are good.
Okay.
You continue on. Great job.
Okay. So as council will recall, then we spent a good part of I think it was our third session, identifying strategic initiatives. And then the fourth session, we talked about a longer list of potential key performance indicators, which we were presenting here under the first goal, which is to preserve, protect, and promote the natural and cultural environment. The strategic initiatives that we came up with, there are 4 of them. They're listed here in terms of continuing to preserve and protect the natural and cultural heritage features of the Muskoka watershed found within the township, including water quality. The second one is leverage local and regional relationships to strengthen the township's response to climate change and ensure that Muskoka Lakes remains adaptable and resilient to its effects. Communicate, market, and promote the use and preservation of our natural environment, including creating dynamic downtowns that highlight the natural environment. And then the fourth initiative, and these aren't necessarily numbered, to be clear, enhance septic management policies, practices, and infrastructure, and support these through greater education of and communication to users. So those were the 4 specific strategic initiatives under this goal that we came to. We, as you'll recall, we didn't settle on a final list of key performance indicators. What we agreed to do was come out with ones that we thought made sense. So as we're out consulting the public, we can work with administration to determine our ability to ensure that we have the data necessary in order to be able to satisfy some of these. But we came up with a short list of 4 potential key performance indicators to tell us if we're achieving progress against the overall goal. Those 4 are listed here in terms of water quality testing, in terms of number of tests and areas tested, shoreline quality testing, quality and health of the first 25 feet of shoreline, septic system infractions. So we're seeking a downward trend in those, and then the use of natural recreation facilities, specifically your parks and trails, and looking to see an increase in usage of those. So I'll pause there again, Your Worship, to see if there's any comment or feedback from council.
Comments? No comments. The only comment I'd kind of make is our septic system infractions. If we're inspecting more, we might find more infractions, which is probably a good thing. So I maybe identifying or whatever, or anyway, I leave that sort of as a high level. Ideally, if we were testing, it's kind of like nobody has COVID because nobody's being tested. Anyway, Councillor Roberts, you have a question?
Very quick, just input on one of the key performances there. The district often talks about the ribbon of life and promotes the ribbon of life. And that shoreline, that ribbon of life is the first 25 feet either way of shoreline.
Okay.
Okay, so it goes both ways.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you. The shoreline quality testing, what do you actually propose for that, Chris?
This was what was identified by council as something we should look into. So we haven't yet started working with administration to figure out what exactly that measure is or how that measurement would be taken. So that's part of our work going forward through the next few weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Mazan?
Sorry, thank you. And through you, a question, and I'm having a hard time getting into the document on my own computer here, Chris. We talked about having the actual official plan. Like all of those policies are designed, I think, or will have the lens of preserving, protecting, and promoting our natural and cultural environment. Is that under a different goal?
We don't make specific reference to it, to it, Councillor. But it would be part of the policy suite to enable this. So I can take that away and make specific reference to it.
Maybe I just like having things very black and white, but it would be the single biggest thing that we will be looking at that would ideally identify new best practices or measures.
Yeah.
To do this. So I think it would be personally one of the main goals, and a key performance indicator would be linking it to did we get it done?
Okay, that's.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we're good. We'll move on to the next slide.
Okay, so the initiatives that we have under Strengthen and Diversify Muskoka Lakes Economy, we came up with 3 strategic initiatives under this goal. Implement the economic development strategy, including the housing, workforce, broadband, and transportation enablers of economic development, and that are featured and highlighted in the economic development strategy itself. The second is to establish criteria to assess and prioritize the desired types of economic growth for the township, particularly light industrial, commercial, and year-round amenities and activities. The third is leveraging existing township infrastructure to establish community hubs that support a thriving community, with a focus on year-round amenities, cultural attractions, and ancillary services that contribute positively to a high quality of life. And in terms of key performance indicators, tracking the vitality of the local economy, median and average family income among permanent residents. Council is looking to see an upward trend in those metrics. Also tracking the number of year-round businesses that are in operation, that do come into operation in the town over time. The overall success of the implementation of the economic development strategy tied to KPIs that are in the strategy or set for the strategy, and the number of events outside of the summer and waterfront season in order to be able to measure the year-round vitality of the community. So I'll pause there again, Your Worship, and answer any questions or take any feedback that councillors have.
Okay, I'm looking around the room, so to speak, and I am seeing no hands. So I think we got this one nailed. Awesome. Thank you. Next.
Pleased to hear it. That's excellent. So the third goal around sustaining and enhancing public services and infrastructure, we came up with 4 strategic initiatives in this respect. The first being develop and implement an actionable recreation and trails master plan that improves community and visitor usage of the township's infrastructure and natural features. The second is to develop and implement a transportation master plan that identifies opportunities to maintain and enhance the township's vital multimodal transportation infrastructure. The third is maintaining a focus on organizational excellence and supporting staff to effectively deliver services to residents. And the fourth is assessing the township's current service delivery models and identify opportunities for modernization, digitization, and enhanced customer service engagement. The key performance indicators, the draft ones or the directional ones that we've identified here, again, to be vetted like the others, for a final set of measures to be determined, is customer service scorecard. So developing one of those and tying it to customer service requests, your responsiveness, and other measures of customer service. The number and diversity of resident-facing communications and interactions annually, And then with respect to transportation infrastructure, specifically transportation infrastructure assessment, the assessment of quality across the various modes. So, you know, civil linear, the water, trails, etc. I'll pause there to take feedback from councillors.
Okay. I am seeing no blue hands, which means we're good. You're doing a great job, by the way.
Well, thank you. And then so for the fourth goal, strengthening key relationships, we came up with 3 strategic initiatives under this. And council will recall that we had quite a robust discussion on whether or not this was a goal unto itself, or if it fell under any one of the previous 3 goals we just discussed. We landed on making it a standalone strategic goal with its own set of core strategic initiatives, those being to conduct a thorough review of existing government relationships at all levels, including the township's level of influence, financial impact analysis, and opportunities for increased collaboration to ensure the interests of the township are being addressed and taken care of. The second is to improve communications activities between the township and other governments to facilitate better working relationships and information sharing in support of legislated mandates and the township's own strategic priorities. And then the third is to identify specific measures that, if achieved, will improve the township's governance, fiscal, and programmatic relationships, specifically with the District of Muskoka. And so the key performance indicators that we've tentatively identified for this specific goal are understanding of the landscape. So there's a feeling amongst council that, you know, we really need to boost our own knowledge and understanding of the the intergovernmental landscape in which we operate and what our relationship is with various orders of government, including our neighbors and the district. The amount of money received from other levels of government, so understanding the value that your township is accruing from those relationships, and then to assess the value for taxpayers' dollars, so the value that your taxpayers are getting from the services and the relationships that you do have, particularly with the district, but other governments as well. So, Your Worship, I'll pause there to get feedback from council.
Thank you, Councillor Jagowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So this was added, this was broken out from the third one, and I think needs a little bit of work. On the key performance indicator, amount of money received from other level of governments, I think that was intended to be received and transferred to, or the value we're getting, not in money that we receive from levels of government, but what we transfer to another level, i.e. the district. I don't understand the wording assessed value for taxpayer dollar. So maybe it just needs a little clarification.
Yeah.
And if I might, can I take you back to a previous slide, or do you want me to do that at the end? I just missed.
No, I'm happy to do that now, Councillor, if that's okay with you.
So if you actually go back to slide 8, where you have the overall summary, and if you go to the third strategic goal, you'll see that there's a trailer on there which says, and strong relationships with other governments, which is missing when you go to the breakdown of that on page 11.
Yeah,
I think you just neglected to remove that because you created the fourth pillar, right?
Yeah, it is a holdover, Councillor Jagowitz. I was just making sure that you're paying attention, Councillor. Good catch.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Chris, maybe you want to go back and sort of do a little bit understanding more of the assessed value for taxpayer dollars? Or...
Yeah, in Your Worship, again, I apologize. It's more to assess the value for money that taxpayers are getting out of the relationships, particularly that you have with the district. So it's not assessed value in terms of how properties are assessed to value. So I'll fix that language. So it's really meant to say, you know, in that fiscal relationship, based on what we contribute versus what we get back, are we achieving optimal value for our contribution?
Okay, thank you. More of a verb. We want to use it as assess the value.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Chris.
Okay. So what I want to talk a little bit about is the next steps, particularly. So we'll make some of the refinements based on council's feedback from today's session. But as you recall, through the process that we agreed to up front, there will be now entering the public consultation and engagement phase of the strategic planning process, and taking the great thinking that council has done through the workshops we did in August, and then going all the way back pre-COVID to January to get the public's reaction to the work that has been done, and also to get their feedback on additional ideas or approaches that they would put on the table for council to consider for inclusion in the strategic plan. And so our stakeholder engagement will have a number of key activities which we're proposing to start on September 26th and run through the course up until early November. It will include a broad-based community survey that would be available through the Engage Muskoka Lakes site. That it would go live on the 26th, which is a Saturday, and that's deliberate because we have had conversations with Lura Consulting, who are undertaking the public engagement process on the official plan. They have a town hall that is scheduled for that day, and one of the slides and one of the things that they're going to share up front with the public and yourselves during that session is that an announcement that we are support the announcement that we are going live with that, and helping the public understand the relationship between the consultations on the strategic plan and the official plan, and how members of the public can go and provide feedback on both. And so we've already started coordinating with Laura to make sure that slide is prepared and that messaging is supported, and we'll work with administration to make sure that the town's public communications around all this going live makes that distinction clear, so that people understand how they can participate in both processes. And that survey will be available to everybody in the community, and it'll enable them to participate in that survey at their own pace and in a time that makes sense for them. The second component of our stakeholder engagement will be community engagement. We're proposing one virtual town hall session to be held mid-October, followed by a second town hall session if it's needed. And what we mean by needed is we expect, based on how active the community is, that we will need it. We just want to, before we formally schedule it, to see what the take up is of the first meeting, and then determine if a second meeting is warranted. And so the intent here is to, again, if folks want to do more than just participate in the survey, they can participate in an open forum where we will be exploring the good work that has been done on the strategic plan to date and get their feedback. And then the third component of our stakeholder engagement approach is a series of one-on-one interviews or focus groups with 6 key stakeholders to be done in mid to late October. These would be facilitated by Strategy Corp, and we have a list of 6 groups that we've identified that we'd like council's blessing to engage with, and I'll go through that in a second. The findings and what we hear from all 3 main engagement activities will be used and will be consolidated into a feedback and recommendations document to be brought back to council, where we'll distill what we heard from the public and what that means to the draft elements of the strategic plan that we've developed together, and make recommendations as to how you may need to adjust or add or change some of the things that were agreed to this point. And then based on where council wants to go with those recommendations, the next step would be to finalize the strategic plan, bring it back for approval, including the development of a longer form narrative document that would be the public facing document that would be available on the town's website, and that could be shared by councillors and staff with stakeholders across the municipality. So we're targeting to bring that narrative, the recommendations document to council in November, and then bringing back the strategic plan with adjustments for approval by council before the end of the year, ideally late November.
Awesome. Any comments, questions? Or let's just get this out to the public as best we can. Everybody, Councillor Jagowitz has a question. Frank? You,
Sorry. Yes, through you. You're going to share those 6 groups that you said, or did you say? Is that at this meeting?
So I can share them right now. I will just share my screen again, Councillor. Just 1 sec. Sorry, it's in a separate document for me.
Yeah, I think probably we'll just send it to all of council who they are, and we can chime in on that. We don't need to make that decision today, do we, Chris?
No, but if we can get it buttoned up in the next couple of weeks, that's great. But just for reference, and this is part of the report that's in your package, I believe, councillors, is we're looking at the Muskoka Tourism, the Muskoka Chamber of Commerce, the Muskoka Lakes Association, the Muskoka Ratepayers Association, Friends of Muskoka, and the Watershed Council.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? We'll go back. Councillor Nishikawa.
Sorry, I just found it interesting, the list of groups pretty much excludes Ward A. So that isn't necessarily the groups that are utilized in this area, I will say.
So, Councillor, what I would say is if there are specific groups from your ward that you'd like added to the list,
Yep.
please provide that. We'd be happy to accept that.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts and Councillor Edwards.
Okay, yes, thank you. Yes, I was going to suggest another small group or another group of organizations within we have, so I'll send it to Chris that as well.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. And again, we can chime on this in October to get a finalized list.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Yes, Chris, and that's for the mayor. I'd like to see the Friends of the Muskoka Watershed also included in that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments at this point? Okay, we're good. Chris, thank you very much. I appreciate your time with us, and again, helping council through difficult COVID times and getting us to 90% of the completion line. As we get some added public input, we will be able to tweak and enhance a little bit. But I think a lot of the heavy lifting has already been done. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Council. It's been a real pleasure, and looking forward to completing the process.
Okay, thank you. Council, I'm going to suggest we take a quick 9-minute break. We'll come back at 2:45, and we'll have first on the agenda our Communications and Economic Development Specialist, Corey. So take a quick 9 minutes. We'll see you at 2:45. Okay, council, we're going to get you guys back. Our 9-minute break. That's pretty good, actually. Right on 9 minutes.
That's not funny because we've had 9 o'clock meetings go till 6 or 7 o'clock. Yeah.
And after this morning's, and yes, council can hear me as I speak right now, but after this morning's General Finance Committee meeting, I figured that Councillor Zavitz was just going to continue to roll through right into my council meeting, which would roll right through probably into planning tomorrow morning.
He was trying to take control because he doesn't get a lot of chances to talk and lead.
We do know that occasionally he talks that his meetings aren't long enough. So
yeah, exactly.
Okay. Council, I think we are back. We're going to clear off a couple of small items and then we're going to go to our delegates. But first and foremost, I'll get Corey up to talk about our COVID relief fund.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. Council may recall in July, we launched our COVID-19 Community Relief Fund program. Staff were asked to report back in 60 days with an update on the program. The review panel reviewed submitted applications and allotted or distributed $24,000 in funding to date for 6 community organizations. A list of those successful applicants can be found in Appendix 1 of the report. Additionally, there is still funding remaining in the fund, $16,000, and the review panel has recommended, as you'll find in the resolution today, that we open it up for a second intake period for community groups to apply again. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any hands in the air? No hands in the air. Let's read the resolution. I agree. Councillor Roberts has moved and Councillor Zavitz has second that be resolved Township Council approves the second application intake for the COVID-19 Community Relief Fund and that the final grant approvals continue to be at the discretion of the review panel. Comments, questions? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Corey, one more.
Yes, next one. Staff are in receipt of a letter from Community Group Muskoka Chautauqua looking for a request from the township to support their grant application under the Canadian Heritage Building Communities Through Arts and Heritage program. This is similar to the request that we approved last year, just supporting their application. As noted in the report, the funding requirement was approved or is met through the funding they received through the COVID-19 Relief Fund. And the only change is, Your Worship, is we've added that to the resolution, just acknowledging that the funding component was allocated through the COVID-19 funding.
Correct. Okay. Any comments on this? I can go straight to the resolution. Moved by Councillor Mazan, second by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved, the Township Muskoka Lakes Council supports Muskoka Chautauqua's grant application under the Canadian Heritage Building Communities Through Arts and Heritage Program for the August 2021 Windermere Festival of the Arts, and further the $200 Muskoka Chautauqua's 2020 approved funding under the Township's COVID Community Relief Fund be allocated to assist with the 2021 festival. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Corey. Appreciate it. I think you're good. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. We're moving to some bylaws, and bylaw 9A6 is to appoint a chief building officer, an acting chief building officer. And this is just some timing for the next 30 days, 60 days, as we make some other changes going on down there. I see Councillor Nishikawa has her hand up. Is it regarding this resolution or something else? Ruth?
It was, while you weren't looking up, I wanted to ask Corey a question. There was a consideration for the banners to be moved from Bala to Windermere. Was there a follow-up on that? Because it is all about the Chautauqua thing and everything.
Corey, do you want to comment?
If I may, Your Worship, yep, we are bringing that forward to the Grants and Economic Development Advisory Committee for further consideration.
Okay, Ruth?
Sorry, so would that mean that Chautauqua is applying twice?
Nope, the request from banners is separate from the request that we had just received. The request that was just approved was support for a grant application for a 2021 Village Festival of the Arts in Windermere. Their banner request is a separate request that came forward to General Finance previously and was recommended to be considered through the Grants and Economic Development Committee. That helps clarify.
Okay, thank you. Back to, I'm going to read this resolution, moved by Councillor Roberts, second by Councillor Zavitz. Be resolved that bylaw 2020-83 to temporarily appoint an acting chief building officer, official, for the Township of Muskoka Lakes be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, so we're clear there. We're going to go to some bylaws. We have some delegations, I believe. And do we have a delegation on this first one or not? Chris is done. I know we have a Mitchell Shnier is with us. I'm going to save that one for a second. Duncan Ross regarding a site plan application that's not on the agenda. I'm just going to think. Do we want to go to those delegations right now? They've been waiting since 2 o'clock. Let's go to those delegations. So from a procedural, I'm going to go to Mr. Ross first of all. We'll let him, I guess, in the room. Duncan Ross, and this is regarding the Port Carling site plan application that was defeated, I believe it was last cycle, if I'm not mistaken. There he is, Mr. Ross. Welcome. And I'm not sure if you've been listening in the background or not, but we don't have an actual agenda item for you today, but the floor is yours for the next 5 minutes if you'd like to talk about the Port Carling Inn. We'll just get you to unmute your microphone. There we go.
There we go. Has Lori given you the elevation and the 4 photos?
We do not have that. Believe.
Okay. I was afraid of that. Okay, so I need to put, and I'm not sure how to do this exactly. Hold on.
So you unfortunately can't share your screen. What I'm going to suggest, if you want something to be displayed, I could pause you for a second. I'm going to have you email that to the clerk, at which point she can display it and you can speak to it. Is that what you're trying to get at right now?
That's what I'd like to do. I'd like to just show the elevation we've developed and then a few photographs just showing basically how far away the boathouse and how small it is compared to the existing building. So yes, I could send that to whoever is going to receive the email.
We're just checking if we have that in right now. Who did you send it to?
I sent it to Lori.
Lori, okay. But our clerk in this room does not have it. So if you can do us a favor, or we'll check with Lori, but if you could send that to Cheryl Mortimer, our clerk, would be appreciated. And we're going to circle back to you if we can. We're going to do a quick jog, if you will, over to Mitchell Shnier, and then we're going to come back to you in 5 minutes. So thank you, and we'll get Mitchell to join us at this particular point. We'll let him in. Okay. There we go. There we go. I don't see Mitchell at this point. Is he in the room? There he is. Mitchell looks, you look, Mitchell, like you are in a downtown CFRB recording studio or something like that with your headset and all the stuff going on behind. I'm not sure if, anyway.
We're ready.
I will let you go ahead, and the floor is yours. You got 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Council, for your time. If you could share the screen, please, Clerk. Sorry, show the presentation.
Okay. And I believe, Mitchell, that this is a slightly edited presentation, if I am correct on that.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have a copy of that presentation? I'm really not a big fan of having, if you have that, just of our presenters controlling our screen. Okay. Just so you do understand, Mitchell, and just so council understands, we're basically turning over this public meeting and the broadcast of this to a delegate, which is not really contemplated within our procedural bylaw. So Mitchell, again, if staff was to see something that is inappropriate on the screen, it'll be deleted immediately and shut down. So just be aware of that.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. I believe we're trying to, there you are, you're a co-host. You can now share your screen. Over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate your time. And what I have here is a PowerPoint presentation, 9 pages, which I'd like to go through for my 5-minute delegation. I know the council has so many things on their plate. I know that life is so complicated now, and I know you just wish this ballot issue would go away, and you'd hope that now that this thing is operating, that you can move on to all the other problems and headaches. But in my view, no, this is just the beginning of the problems that have been dumped in your laps, and as you've seen, without any help from the province. The problem at Pearce Place is that they have no idea when or how much flow will be going past their docks. Brad Burgess had an example recently where he was docking his motorboat and was shocked at the force of the water. His boat, as it hit the dock, almost threw his grandchildren out. His words were, it was as if his motorboat was welded to the dock, the force of the water. The Swift River, they have never told Pearce Place the range of flows to expect at their docks, when they're starting, what 100% flow would be. That is, they have no culture of safety of informing people how they're going to be impacted by the flows that their generating station creates, or when this will happen. On June 20th, Bill Perkis's granddaughter, 26-year-old to 28-year-old granddaughter, she's a kindergarten teacher. She was working in the store and was informed of an unconscious woman submerged in the Bala North Channel. As a good Samaritan, she immediately dived in the water, saved this woman's life, drags her out of the water. Of course, she had to dive in there. You couldn't call, they did call 911, who did respond 10 minutes later when this woman would have been drowned and gone. But as a good Samaritan, Kathleen Bino rescued this woman, not having any idea how fast or even if the generating station was operating. This easily could have been 2 or 3 fatalities rather than this good news story of Kathleen saving somebody's life. The unknowns are just too dangerous here. And there's more. So Swift River said that outside of their downstream safety boom, it would be safe to continue in water recreation. Well, this is a photograph I took last week of the downstream safety boom. You can see the Moon River docks up in the right-hand corner here. And there's white water, and this is not even operating at full capacity. There's white water coming out of the safety boom. Well, if you were in a stand-up paddleboard or a canoe or a kayak, this would dump you out of your boat. That is, the Swift River thinks that they can just put up a warning sign and it is the end of their responsibility. Well, it doesn't work like that. You know, clearly this is dangerous outside of their safety boom. This is contrary to what they had committed for their environmental approval. And there's more. If you've taken a look upstream of this generating station, there are these huge yellow floating signs, and a large quantity of them for months have been sunk and inverted. That is, they just don't seem to care what goes on in Bala. They're not taking care of their site. They don't have a culture of safety, of doing the right thing. The township's Portage landing site, I just took a walk around it before they put up that useless fence they have there now. There are boards with rusty nails sticking up. There's pieces of metal coming out of the ground. And the Swift River, and it's in the lease agreement, were to forthwith commence and diligently carry out the site restoration. Sure, they were given a year to do it. They're not even trying. And COVID is just no excuse. There is so much construction going on right now. Any lame brain excuse they have that they can't get the site restoration started is just them delaying, only doing the bare minimum, doing nothing for the community. It's just shocking that they just are doing this for their own corporate profit and going to no trouble whatsoever for anybody else. And there's more. It is an obligation of Swift River to inform and warn the public before they increase flow. And yet, a couple of weeks ago, Alan Turnbull, swimming in the Moon River, he was right there, and they increased the flow without warning him, and he had to get out of the Moon River. Well, this goes against their obligations for public safety. They've got this sign up claiming public property only for their staff parking. I understand from the mayor that they're going to get rid of that sign, but it's just they're greedy. They grab whatever they can. Walking around Portage Landing, there's this mysterious red oozing out of the ground right now. I don't know what it is, what they've done to Township Portage property site. There's a series of things these people are doing, which is just not for the community. The previous Township Council's actions strongly promoted and allowed and facilitated the construction of this dangerous facility. And we see that what Swift River is doing now, they just don't do the things that are safe. I think it is important for the current Township Council to be seen to be strongly disapproving, as you did last year when in November and January of 2019, you passed resolutions opposing operation in the summer. What I think is important now is that, as you've seen, you've gone to the province, you've sent a letter, you've asked that it not be permitted to operate in the summer, and you've been ignored by the province. Unfortunately, this falls in your laps. What we're asking for is that Township Council directly requests Swift River Energy not to operate during the summer. I think it's important for you to distance yourself from the previous council that promoted this generating station to say, look, Swift River, you are not doing things that are safe. We don't want anything to do with this. We don't think you should be operating in the summer. So I think until they can show these public safety issues have been addressed, for example, they should be informing Pearce Place when they're operating. They should be showing Pearce Place, this is what it's like at your docks when we operate at 25%, 50%, 100%, so you can know whether or not it would be safe to rent canoes and kayaks or for people scuba diving. There should be notification of what's going on. They should make sure that they're not making the water dangerous downstream and outside of their downstream safety boom. And until they've done that, I think the township should publicly post a letter on the township's website asking the Swift River Energy Limited not operating their generating station. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. We'll stop sharing your screen so we can see council at this particular time. Thank you. We'll remove that, and we'll remove Mitchell as a co-host would be great. Or you've got that. Okay, so we can stop that specific request, and we'll just go to the Brady Bunch view of all of council would be great. Any comments from council at this particular time? Let's see any hand. Oh, there's a hand. Councillor Zavitz.
Just listen. Thank you. Through your chair, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's Mitchell's. Mitchell, can you or if you remove him as a host, can you stop? There we go.
Thank you. Thank you. It's hard to not feel my heart skip a beat when this topic comes on the table. And I guess to my comment would be a very general one, and perhaps to Mr. Shnier. Well, I suppose he's laid out what he would be desirous of us doing. I might ask council what is the minimum we could hope for out of this delegation today, out of the acknowledgement of that there are things going on. There really is very fast water going by Pearce, and it's almost it's not personal. It's a business in the township that is affected greatly by fast-moving water. I saw it 8 days ago when they had both north and south and the plant running. Wow, they blew a lot of water out of the lake Muskoka, as we all now know. That was pure and simple dangerous. I wouldn't have taken any of my boats of my 52 years of boating anywhere near that. So that's what Mitchell's talking about. And I wonder, are we aren't safe harmless, but are we powerless? And I guess, Mayor, to you, not to ramble, but you did ask us months ago to let you work with the ministry as it relates to, water levels, water flooding, and how does this interplay? Is there any interplay? Is there any life left to this horse?
The only thing I'll comment on, and I appreciate the views of water, fast-moving water out of the plant. I hearken this at this particular time to almost a spring freshet. When we've got to move water, and it has to be moved from Lake Muskoka through the Moon River and out to Georgian Bay, water's going to move. We've had more rainfall in September this year than we've had in the past 10 years. That water has to go somewhere, and it's going to cause fast-moving water, either the north or the south channel of Bala. In the past, the water was always through the south channel. You certainly wouldn't want to take a boat in and around there. You could get caught. If you were to pull a boat into the Port Carling locks, and the water coming out of Lake Rosso and Lake Joe would pin and weld your boat to the locks as well. Same token is going to happen. So I can't necessarily blame that on a hydro plant. I do appreciate that somebody fell in the water and was unconscious. We have boating incidents and people falling in the water regularly across. The hydro plant didn't make them fall in the water. It is a unsafe area, but the province has deemed it a safe area. So I'm not sure what we can do more. We have made a request of the province. They have not answered that. I think the only thing that I would suggest we do to help Mitch on this particular point is I'm happy to write a letter to seek an answer to that prior resolution. For us to pass another resolution to flag it, whatever, I think is going to fall on deaf ears. You know, there's an old adage that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. In this particular case, the squeaky wheel might just get removed from the train and replaced with new wheels. And we've got a lot of stuff to move forward with. So that's kind of my high level. Again, I'm happy to ask the question why the province hasn't answered it. I think we're going to get back the answer because we don't have a problem with it. And it's not our jurisdiction. It's as simple as I can say it. Yes, we want to support it. I feel horrible for Perks Place. Council saw some correspondence, I believe, this morning from Bill Purkis to myself and a response. So we're doing what we can do, I think, at the end of the day. And again, I'm happy to send a letter asking for the province to respond to our prior resolution versus sending off another resolution. Councillor Nishikawa has a comment.
Thank you. I was a little concerned and probably more mixed up about what you said, Mr. Mayor. I really think that we need to be more conscious of the dangers and the lives of our taxpayers. And I get that I'm going to wash my hands because it's somebody else's jurisdiction. I kind of think that's a little bit shameful to me because I'm out there with those people on a regular basis. I just don't get that. In fact, if you use the example of Alan Turnbull, and where is our town dock that we're talking about spending $400,000 on, or $300,000 and change, or whatever that is? That happens to be in front of Alan Turnbull's property. And so we're going to rebuild a dock that we know today is not safe for the public to use. I mean, we've seen, Mitchell has brought forward those examples, and then there's a lot more. My concern, and what I was hoping that in some form of another, maybe that dock needs to be reconfigured. Perhaps if it was facing in a different direction, it might actually stop some of that rough water in the tow and things like that. There's so much that I feel that we don't really we're not taking into consideration. But I don't think that we should be putting our head in the sand saying, yeah, not my job, man, kind of thing. Because I just think that people expect more from us. And again, those are just a couple of the examples that we've heard, but we know that there's a lot more going on. And my concern again is that there was a request out there, and where did it go? And this request has been there for years and years, that, for instance, a plant wouldn't be operating on our busy season, our in-water season. We don't have that conversation anymore, and I hope we do. I just don't feel comfortable, for instance, us forging ahead and building new docks and everything else, when in fact we haven't identified how dangerous this area is.
Thank you, Councillor Zavitz. Or is your hand up from before, or you want to come back?
Thank you. It's through you. I have this backwards today. Listen, I share everything that Councillor Nishikawa has said. It is a very dangerous area. And I do believe that the hydro plant has stabbed Pearce Place in the heart. It's destroyed a business. And for us to not acknowledge it, again, though, I do feel that we're somewhat powerless. I mean, because here we are, I'm on economic development. We're trying to empower these people, yet at the same time, we know very well what's going on in Bala. I thank you for your offer to write a letter. I hope that that letter is strong, it's pointed, it covers the basis. And I'd appreciate seeing a copy of it. Thank you.
I'm happy to share a copy with that, with council. And just understand to Councillor Nishikawa, no one's burying their head in the sand. I'm certainly not burying my head in the sand, and we have put forward resolution, but we do not dictate what the province does. The province is the one who has jurisdiction over this. We have gone to the wall oftentimes on this. We have raised certain issues. I think we have said we don't want it operating in the summertime. The fact that they're allowed to operate in the summertime, I think the province is telling us that they don't have a problem. We don't have it in writing, and we'll get it in writing. So I'm, again, happy to ask for an official response to our resolution, and then we can plot another course at that particular time. That resolution, if I'm not mistaken, also talked about compensation to Pearce Place in particular, and I don't know whether any compensation has been provided to him in particular or not, but the province regularly makes a number of decisions that have impacts on businesses and lower tier, and people want compensation, and it depends on what happens. So all I can say is this council has chimed in. This council has made requests of the province. We don't have an answer, but I think the answer is clear that in no answer, they were okay with what's going on, but I will seek to what I can to get more answers on that, I think is the best I can suggest. Councillor Hayes?
Thank you. Through you, do we have anyone on staff that is capable of going down and getting a specimen of what that goo is that's seeping out so that we can try and figure out what it is and where it came from?
I think we probably do, but I think it's Ministry of the Environment that would have to be contacted to understand what's going on there. Director Becking, are you on the call with us still, or do we lose you? Director Becking, what's your advice as to how we handle what's coming out of the rock there? You might not be there. Okay. We're missing Director Becking. That's okay. And we can circle back to that, and we'll get Director Becking to comment as to what is happening on that rock. So I think that area is actually closed to the public, was it not, Mitchell, right now?
It was. However, on the weekend, there was about 4 or 5 people fishing there. They get down there anyways. They're walking around right at the waterfront there. The fence doesn't matter. I don't know if they even saw it for the way they went in.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to chime in right now? I think, so if it's okay with you, Mitchell, I mean, unless if council wants to provide another resolution, we can send another resolution. My advice would be that we will just ask for, and I can do that with a letter to Mr. Miller to try and get an answer on our prior resolution, if that works, and we can move forward. Okay, I'm getting a nodding of heads for that. Anyone in opposition? There we go. Okay, Mitchell, so we're going to try and get an answer to our prior resolution, and we'll be able to circulate that back, and I will make sure you're copied on the letter that's sent to MPP Miller at the same time.
I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. We're going to come back now to Mr. Ross. I think we can, we should have the presentation. I think Director Pink has that information. And Duncan Ross, we're back into the meeting. And, oh, no, we got Mr. Surbeck. Stefan, we're going to pause you for a moment here. You're welcome to observe, but there we go. We have this, but do we have Mr. Ross? Are you, Duncan, are you in this meeting?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Yes, we can hear you, so I'll let you continue on with your comments and observations.
Okay, from what I understand, there was a concern that the the boathouse as proposed would obstruct the view of the heritage part of the main building. And I've got 3 photographs and an elevation. The elevation was taken based on the survey that was done, and shows that the 2-story boathouse is well off to the side, and is, if you look at the photographs, you can see that the boathouse is actually between 2 sets of trees. If you get close enough to the boathouse, you wouldn't see the heritage aspect of the left-hand side of our building there, the left-hand side, because in that photo that you're looking at right now, you see that there are some trees off to the right. They block your view anyways, because the boathouse is on the other side of that set of trees. So these photographs are taken, a reasonable distance away. In this photograph you're looking at right now, you would not even see the boathouse in this picture. So it's, I think, fairly tucked away, shall we say, as far as it could be tucked away in these circumstances. So we're asking that council reconsider the decision to not approve the site plan, and ask that it be approved based on the elevations that we've presented and these photographs. This little newspaper clip is just to show the same more or less situation. It's that boathouse. We've kept it as far off to the side as it was in the past. I'm not sure how long ago this was, probably in the 30s or 40s, but it's just showing again the same distance between the 2 buildings, and that's it. And here's the elevation again, showing we're 2 floors high, but once you get the slope of the land, etc., plus the first floor, we're basically so small compared to the rest of it that I don't believe it matters that much. And if you look again at the photos, you'll see that just to where the left of where the boathouse is in this diagram, that's where the trees are. And that's my 5-minute presentation.
Thank you. We'll go back to our full screen of all the councillors. And any councillor have any specific question right now? I guess if we are going to reconsider this, we can't obviously reconsider this today. We'd have to come back, potentially come back to planning cycle, or it could come back directly to council if we want, but it's going to have to be a cycle or 2 out before we can reconsider this at this particular time. Any councillor want to chime in? I'll look as particular to our Ward C councillors. Regarding this, Councillor Nishikawa wants to comment first of all.
Thank you. Thought a lot about this since our last meeting, and from a heritage perspective, and I myself was the chair of the Heritage Committee at the time for this particular one, and as well as the ACO for Muskoka. We had plenty of opportunity to actually even go through the building and pick up our archives that we felt were important, and we could have transferred those to the museum. We had lots of opportunities to actually even address things like the fireplace, those types of issues, those things that none of us can see anymore. I don't have the same historic feeling from this particular site any longer, other than a fantastic plaque when we do a walk through town. I believe that, and I strongly feel that we should work with these people. They actually are on sewer and water. Yay! All of those things we want from a resorts type property, that's there. And even I really do think that we missed the opportunity to try to slam down some heritage aspects, because our township didn't move on when we had the opportunity to do so. As well as far as the boathouse goes, I actually think it adds to the facility from the appearance than just blank walls. I just think that, I hope that this comes back, because whatever decisions I made in the past, I've rethought, and knowing exactly what happened, I will say that the owner at the time gave us lots of opportunities and we didn't act on them.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Nishikawa is good to bring this back at one point. Anybody else want to chime in? Councillor, someone's blue hand, I see going up and down. I saw Councillor Bridgeman at one point, I think there. Oh, Councillor Jagowitz, maybe, Frank, we're not using our blue hands anymore, so I don't always see the screen.
No, yes, Mr. Mayor, no, my blue hand is up. It must be at your end. I also see Councillor Bridgeman and Roberts, but
why am I not blue hands?
This is, do I have the floor? Or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this is actually through the staff. My recollection of this when it came to either planning or council, that it was not turned down. It was actually approved subject to a comment from the Heritage Committee. That was my understanding of it, and I'd like if staff could chime in on it. But before they do, I'd like to indicate I'm on the Heritage Committee, although I know not very much about heritage, and I was one of the ones that voted to not have this go forward. Since then, I've had the opportunity of reviewing the property. Peter Quattro was a very good host and showed me around. And I had a totally different concept of what was there. I was still living back in the days of the previous owner, I won't mention his name, where there was a whole game going on. And I see there's a new owner and that they are running a hotel there. And so I know it's a heritage thing, but I have changed my mind. And the only other question I would have for staff, and that would be that just some background on when the property originally, there's condos to the other side, and originally it was one property. Then under the 50-50 rule, the condos were built, and of course then the ownership changed. And then I thought the previous owner was some attempt to do another 50-50, but I've read somewhere that for planning purposes, the two properties are together. So I would just like a confirmation from planning staff that this property we're talking about, all those units are resort. There isn't a residential component.
I'm not sure if Mr. Pink is online or not. I will say from what happened originally, this went through our planning council. We approved it at planning committee, excuse me. But when it got to council with some additional heritage information, we rejected it at the council table is what happened. And so we're back to here now. Mr. Pink, did you want to comment on one? I know the far left side is all condo, but David?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Hello, Council. Yeah, I would, the mayor is correct. This application was recommended to be approved by Planning Committee, but conditional on comments from the Heritage and Attainable Housing Committee being received when it got to Council. Council received those comments from the Heritage Committee and defeated the resolution, I believe it was last month. With respect, there's an extensive planning history to this property. It was originally one property together with the condominiums to the south. When the condominium was approved, that was the 50% residential that was allowed. There is a zoning bylaw that is still in effect that deems the two properties as one for planning. So they wouldn't be able to continuously create 50% more, 50% more, 50% more, and leave it down. It's still locked with the residential units to the south. I do not believe I believe a prior owner may have been desirous of pursuing that. I don't believe an application was ever made to permit additional residential units. So that provides some clarification on the background.
Okay, I see a number of councillors and Councillor Bridgeman, Roberts, Hayes, and Edwards all want to speak. In the interest of time, is there anybody who would not be in favor of this coming back to a planning committee meeting to rediscuss this, or it could actually potentially come back to council at its earliest opportunity, I think. David, comment would you prefer to come back to a planning committee, or could it come directly back to council, probably from a procedural, whenever the fastest it could come back?
Initially, thank you, Your Worship, prior to Mr. Ross's delegation today, I was in the midst of having staff prepare a letter to the applicant advising them of what had occurred and probably recommending that it go back to the Heritage and Attainable Housing Committee, seeing as that is where the concern was raised. However, obviously that process would take some time. Minutes of that meeting would have to be approved. So 2 Heritage meetings to go to Planning Committee and then eventually to Council. That's a lengthy time. I would certainly be in Council's hands if you wish it to directly return to Council. That is certainly we're at your will. That's fine. But as you noted, because the resolution was defeated, I would look to the clerk, but I believe it's 3 rounds or cycle of meetings before that matter could come back for a different decision.
Okay, we will double check with the clerk as to as soon as that can come back. If there's anyone with a different opinion or comment, I'll go down the list quickly. Councillor Bridgeman first. I see Councillor Edwards and Roberts as well, but Councillor Bridgeman, just want to comment? Are you okay to come back directly to Council?
Oh, directly to Council, Mayor Harding. I think the heritage part is gone from this
Right.
development anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts and Councillor Edwards, are you in the same in agreement?
Yes, I'm in agreement as soon as possible. Back to council.
Councillor Edwards?
Yes, I can say it should come back to council, but also there's a heritage meeting on the 1st, and I think there's some new information on it. There was a existing boathouse that they showed you there. I have some other pictures that it would almost fit in being 2 stories. So I think if it went back, I think they would approve it anyway. So it should come straight to council.
Okay, we'll come straight to council, and Mr. Ross, maybe we can, or we've actually got a copy of that, but we'll make sure that those photographs go to our Heritage Committee meeting at the next, and they can just provide comment, if you will, for council. So I'm going to leave it with the clerk and Mr. Pink to bring this back as soon as possible that our procedural bylaws allow. And Mr. Ross, we will advise when that's going to happen. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. Council, we're going to continue to move on. I know Mr. Surbeck is in the room. And Stefan, thank you for waiting and being patient. And we are going, you want to speak on another matter that's, I think, on our agenda today, correct?
That's correct, yes. Item 9B3, the Gibbard zoning bylaw application.
9B3. Okay, go.
Thank you. Stefan Sherbeck, Planscape, 104 Kimberley Avenue. We are the planners representing the owner, Adam Gibberts. First of all, I just wanted to thank members of the Planning Committee and staff for the positive recommendation and bring this forward to Council for final approval. And when we took a look at the bylaw attached to the agenda after one final review, the bylaw in front of Council today, there's one area that requires attention. As shown on, maybe just take a step back, as shown on the bylaw schedule itself, members of the Planning Committee may recall that the island is currently comprised of 2 legally existing dwellings and a sleeping cabin situated on top of a former 2-story boathouse. The application was submitted to reconstruct the 2-story boathouse with a slightly larger structure, albeit within the rules and regulations of the zoning bylaw. And the other aspect of this is to convert one of the dwellings from a residence to that of a sleeping cabin. So at the end of this process, what would be in place is 1 dwelling and 2 sleeping cabins. So the issue specifically relates to the converted dwelling. The bylaw itself contains notation that the ground floor area of the structure is 544 square feet. And it also has a veranda of approximately 611 square feet. We unintentionally forgot to recognize the 2nd floor of this area of this existing building, an additional 360 square feet. As you may recall, the zoning bylaw permits a maximum of 650 square feet for a sleeping cabin, and we would therefore require a variance to increase this maximum floor area. It has always been our intent to recognize the total size of this structure, and it was just simply missed when we went to visit the site. The structure itself is in disrepair. I honestly did not go inside and take a look around. But in conclusion, for my brief delegation today. As the committee supported this application and there were no objections, no questions at this meeting, we would respectfully request an additional exemption be included to the bylaw to permit the sleeping cabin to be 904 square feet of floor area. Ultimately, there are no changes that impact the size, the location, or the setbacks of the structure. It's simply an exemption that was missed. We would again request that council consider this a minor amendment, again, as the intent and purpose of the application has not changed. Thank you for your time, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zurek. I do know that Director Pink has also prepared a minor amendment that reflects the same on this particular one. So if I might suggest, David, do we want to jump ahead? I'm not sure if it's you or Ryan who's going to introduce this, but might as well just do a quick overview and then we can talk about the minor amendment specifically. David?
Certainly, Mr. Allen is at the meeting. He can provide further background information, or certainly between him and I answer any questions council has, whether you wish to move to the bylaw now or later in the agenda. That's certainly
I'm going to suggest we move right to the bylaw. So we have a first and second reading, and then there would be a minor amendment to change it to the 904 square feet. Councillor, are you okay with the first and second reading at this particular point? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Hayes, second by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-76 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 Jervix Rule 4/24/24 be read a first and second time. All those in favor? That's carried. Anybody opposed? Councillor Chicago, but that is carried. Thank you. Okay, so we've got that. And then David, the minor amendment that we're talking about is to change the sleeping cabin that exists today based on square footage, and that would allow that sleeping cabin to be registered at 904 square feet, correct? Okay, we see nodding of heads. Council, any comments or questions on that? I see Councillor Bridgeman and then Councillor Jaglowitz. Barb?
Just a comment. When we go from 650 square feet to a second floor and we're putting in 900 square feet, that almost says to me that's a second dwelling that you live in, not a sleeping cabin. And I'm having a lot of concern with that, actually.
Mr. Pink, maybe you want to explain. I think it's more about the cooking facilities within that at that particular point, even though it's an oversized. David?
Mr. Allen may wish to add to my comments, but strictly from a technical perspective, there's two distinctions. One, yes, the stove needs to be removed, but then also the maximum size of a sleeping cabin is 650 square feet. And that actually emanates back to the beginning of bylaw 8787 in the 80s. The board differentiated between dwellings and sleeping cabins. Sleeping cabins were maximum 650, dwellings were minimum 750, and it's a fairly sort of cornerstone provision in our zoning bylaw since that time to differentiate between the two. I certainly appreciate Chair Bridgman's concerns. When you have sleeping cabins of that size, you start questioning, even though a stove may be removed at those dimensions, are they functioning potentially more as a dwelling? But I would look to the applicant, Mr. Sherbach, whether he wishes to clarify and provide some substantiation for that request, or Mr. Allen wishes to add to any of those comments.
Stefan, do you want to make just a comment in there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I will note that the legally existing dwelling, the one at the opposite end of the island is larger at just over 1,100 square feet in size. So, from a sheer numbers perspective, the main dwelling is larger. It will establish the main use, and the sleeping cabin as it exists today is currently in place, and it's just simply recognizing what is there today. The cooking facilities has been removed. The owner did show some pictures, and there's absolutely no cooking facilities at all. So it is clearly a small structure with a smaller upper floor.
Okay. Councillor Jaglowitz?
Thank you. I share Councillor Bridgman's concerns. Is the structure remaining as is? Is that that's the answer. But if this is approved, what would prevent the structure from then being replaced at the 900 and some odd square feet? Would there be anything to prevent that?
Basically, I'm going to say no, it doesn't. If we go back to, I think, the overall intent and back up to this application before Councillor Nishikawa has a comment or question, and David or maybe Stefan, there are already a number of dwellings on the property as of right today, but to expand the one, we're requesting for a kitchen to be removed and one to be converted from a residence down to a sleeping cabin.
It's supplementary, but in fairness, it is quite a change to the original application. Maybe it needs to be recirculated. Because I see there, I'm looking at a letter of a neighbor who has comments. I'm not sure if it's an objection or not.
David, Mr. Pink?
Just to clarify a few points, I don't believe any neighbors voiced any opposition to this, although Mr. Allen can confirm that. Ultimately, it's at the discretion of council whether you wish to recirculate and whether you consider this minor. A couple things I would note. Again, I think as it's been made clear, there's no changes proposed to the structure that currently exists at this size. I think in this case, staff may be somewhat more supportive of it, given the size of the property. It is essentially a double lot. It could be subdivided in compliance with the requirements. And in that case, 2 dwellings and 2 sleeping cabins would be allowed. So I think staff would be more comfortable in this case recognizing an oversized sleeping cabin because essentially they could subdivide and potentially have 2 dwellings on the property. So I think given the controls that would be in place, freezing the development, any changes, whether it's a future severance or expansion of those structures, would have to come back to council and or committee of adjustments. So I think in this case, certainly I don't think planning staff is entirely opposed to recognizing the existing structure.
Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I actually do believe that this is not minor when you're suggesting that, you know, another 300 square feet or whatever the exact number would be. My concern is that exactly that. I heard Stefan say that it was a little dangerous to go into this building. Likely it's going to be rebuilt. I'm very concerned that we are so far off our bylaws on this, and that in fact, and I don't like that threat. I've never liked, well, they could subdivide it. Well, let them bring forward a subdivision application then. There's a whole lot more involved with that. I don't believe that we should be allowing 2 oversized bunkies. There's nothing to make me feel that this particular application is unique, that should I just keep this in the back of in my pocket so that I can say to other people, so-and-so got away with this, so you come forward too? Because I think that's what's happening. And I don't believe that this is a minor little addition, and absolutely I feel that 100% that this thing is going to get rebuilt, and it's going to get rebuilt with, maybe there'll be another deck somewhere that won't be included in the square footage. You won't know, and council won't see that. But it is so far off what our bylaws say, and I think that we need to start trying to stick to our bylaws.
Okay, I'm going to just ask Mr. Pink, Mr. Surback, either one of you, to help simplify where we are at or where we were at. This application came, and I'm just trying to remember back, I don't have it sitting in front of me, because we wanted to rebuild a boathouse or change a boathouse. We recognized the number of buildings on the property at exterior dimensions, and staff to be able to expand, I believe the boathouse, whatever, are recommending the conversion of one of the dwellings to a sleeping cabin. That's sort of Cole's notes, but maybe you can give us some dimensions and understand what the expansion of, I think it was the boathouse, is causing, how many extra feet you want to put there, and just the pluses and minuses of the entire application. David, maybe?
I saw Mr. Allen's hands up, and he's certainly more familiar with the details and the specifics of the application.
Okay.
Probably best if Ryan, if you could just confirm that background, and you may wish to ask the question you had.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
My pleasure. I think it's important to go back to what the existing situation was before the application was made. In 1993, there was a bylaw passed by council that allowed 2 dwellings to exist on this property. Both of the dwellings are on land. There was also a 2-story boathouse existing at the time. This zoning bylaw amendment was submitted to do a number of things. One was to increase the cumulative dock width associated with this new 2-story boathouse that's being constructed, in addition to some of the existing docks that are to be retained. There was 2 dwellings on land that I mentioned. One of the dwellings is to stay a dwelling. The other smaller dwelling that's very close to the water is proposed to be converted into a sleeping cabin. And the 2-story boathouse, which has recently been demolished, is proposed to be enlarged to have 650 square foot sleeping cabin on the 2nd floor. So the resultant development on this lot would be a 650 square foot sleeping cabin above a 2-story boathouse. There would be the existing larger dwelling that's approximately 1,200 square feet. There's the smaller second dwelling that's approximately 904 square feet. The bylaw only allows a maximum sleeping cabin area of 650 square feet. So this is the result, or the reason for this added exemption, is to allow the added 300 square feet to in that dwelling. Ultimately, I understand it's the 2nd floor. That building can be reconstructed in the same location, same size, same extent. And if this bylaw approves, that will continue to be the case. I think it's also important to note that any lot that has more than 1 dwelling or more than 1 sleeping cabin, or a site-specific bylaw that says this is the only development that you're allowed related to those structures, there will be no additions, enlargements, relocations to any dwelling or sleeping cabin on this lot without future planning approval. So there is a degree of control that you have over future changes on this lot, more so than would apply to any other property. And I think the last thing that I would mention, and it was highlighted in our planning report, is this lot could be developed with 1 dwelling with a maximum area of 7,500 square feet and 1 sleeping cabin with a maximum area of 650 square feet. The proposed development is far below what the maximum habitable area could be achieved on this lot, even without severing it to create a 2nd lot. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. So I think actually the one thing you did answer right now is, roughly they have 2,600 square feet, 3,000 square feet even of built form on the property, or would be the resultant with this, where they could be doing over 8,000 between a 7,500 square foot cottage and a 650 bunkie. So we're significantly lower on that. The other thing that I heard you saying, I just want to get confirmation, there's an existing 2-story boathouse. How big is the 2nd story of that 2-story boathouse currently? I know the proposal is to go to 650.
Through you, Your Worship, it's approximately 350 square feet.
So we want to add 200 square feet or 300 square feet to that is really all we're trying to do, and recognize that one of the dwellings has that amount of square feet in it, but we're converting that from a dwelling to a sleeping cabin. I'm in favor of this minor amendment. I believe it's a minor amendment based on everything else, and I'm not sure where everyone else wants to go forward, or we want to pause. Councillor Bridgeman?
Just a question of clarification. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Allen, does that mean that they actually could just rebuild this as another dwelling too? Is that still a right on this property?
It's my understanding that applications have been submitted for the boathouse. There would be some order of operation to consider. I'm not sure if Stefan, you could correct me if I'm wrong. I know the dock was under construction when I visited the property. I'm not sure if the permit for the boathouse and sleeping cabin have been obtained yet. An enlargement above the existing 350 square feet wouldn't be permitted because there are currently 2 dwellings on the lot. So the upper level of the existing 2-story boathouse can only be replaced with that existing floor area of approximately 350 square feet. But to the mayor's point, really the whole point of this application is they're proposing to increase the area of the sleeping cabin above the boathouse from approximately 350 to 650 square feet. and change the existing dwelling that has 904 square feet of floor area into a 904 square foot sleeping cabin. So the resultant total increase in habitable floor area will be located within the new two-story boathouse.
I'm sorry, that's not exactly what I asked, I don't think, Mr. Allen. All I wanted to know was they've got 2 dwellings on the property now. It's their right to renovate, to do whatever, and continue with those 2 dwellings if they wanted to do that. That was my question, thank you.
And
So
I
I'm in support of
would
this.
make one more point that those aren't legal non-conforming or complying structures. Those structures were approved in a bylaw from 1993. So those are 2 legal bona fide dwellings on the lot today.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Yes, so if there's two sleeping cabins on the lot right now, and they wanted to do anything on the existing cottage, make it larger, they would have to come before us again, would they not? Because it's legal non-compliant?
Through you, your worship, there are presently 2 dwellings on the lot, not 2 sleeping cabins. There's
Okay, but I'm saying if we change that to a sleeping cabin, there's 2 sleeping cabins.
And any future expansion of a sleeping cabin or dwelling would require future planning approval.
Right, okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Much along the same as the last question. I guess my understanding, because I doubt very much that a council that I've ever been on will, if someone comes forward and says, now we want to rebuild the cottage and we want to rebuild 6,000, 7,000 square feet, because that's what's happening out there. I doubt that we're going to turn them down along with their 900 square foot additional other home or whatever. I just think we're going to have a whole lot more built for them. And sure, it's not in front of us today, but the reality is I just have to step out my door and look at what other people have done when they've somewhat. I would have been happier if the sleeping cabins were actually truly identified as sleeping cabins. And so that other unit that we're now being asked to add square footage to was to remain at the 650 square feet. If we're going to have 2 sleeping cabins, let them be 2 650 square feet, not another home. Because I do believe that the other home will get rebuilt and rebuilt much larger.
Anybody else comments at this particular time? So what we have before us again, we've got a first and second reading. There's a minor amendment. Just again, to kind of recap, this applicant came to us. They have 2 dwellings on the property. They have a 350 square foot sleeping cabin. They're proposing to expand the 350 square foot sleeping cabin to 650 square feet. And in doing so, they are going to remove the kitchen and convert one of the dwellings to that of a sleeping cabin. It's that simple. And that's what we did approve. The inside, there was the second floor. We didn't comment on that. The inside space, so the outside's not changing. They can't build any more outside. They can't expand. Those walls need to remain the same. And any future development, maybe they never change it. But if they do, it has to come to a council for approval. So I'm going to read the minor amendment and see where we go on this. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Muskoka Lakes amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2020-76, and this amendment is minor in nature and does not require further public circulation. Hereby approved prior to 3rd reading. The minor amendment shall permit a sleeping cabin or converted dwelling number 2 with a floor area of 904 square feet, which is recognizing what it actually is today. Okay, any further comments? All those in favor? It's carried. And those against? It's carried. Thank you. And 3rd and final reading, moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-76 be read a 3rd time and finally passed. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that is carried. Thank you. Mr. Surbeck, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, so that's that bylaw.
If we could ask for the effective public submissions, that would be helpful.
Good call, David. Thank you. Anybody? We had the public chiming in. Anybody want to take a stab? I think there was recognized that it's a large island. Yes, there was a prior, if I can remember correctly, there was a prior freeze on it, but the adding 300 feet to the boathouse based on lot coverage, I know from my recollection, kind of balanced out to the potential public's input. So I don't think we really made any changes were affected by the public.
And there was no public opposition.
There you go. Okay. Where am I going here? I got one here. Let's go to 74. There we go. Ryan, do you want to introduce this, or are we okay? I don't think, is there any minor amendments to this one? Yes, there is. You want to introduce this one? Bylaw 9B1, just a quick overview.
Sorry, I'm a bit behind here. Can you tell me which item we are here?
5020901.
9B1.
9B1.
Sorry to interrupt, Mayor.
Mr.
Sharp
Sharp?
here. I'll introduce this application.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. I'm having some problems with my internet today, so I'm just going to go with the audio and not video stream.
I look much better when I do the same.
So consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications have been submitted in the name of 01 Ontario Incorporated and Tuckner, respectively. In summary, the applications will grant a consent to sever a portion of land from the property in the ownership of 502190 Ontario Incorporated, and will provide an exemption from the definition of a lot identified as one lot for planning purposes, but the benefiting lot in the ownership of Tuckner. The two lots cannot merge due to municipal road allowance. Planning Committee recommended in August that the applications be approved. All requiring the rezoning of parts of the retained lot to environmental protection and the restriction of permitted uses on the severed lot to conservation and open space recreation. 4 submissions have been received and are included in Council's agenda package. No new submissions have been received since Planning Committee. No other minor amendments are required. I have no further comments at this time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions from Council. Thank you.
Okay. Council, any comments, questions on this right now? Okay. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-74 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, 5020901, Ontario Inc. Rule 41229 and 4122920 and 41245-6 be read a first and second time. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Minor amendment. Mr. Sharp.
Yep, so there's 2 minor amendments. Let me see here. So the first one is to rezone portions of the retained lot from open space to environmental protection EP1. And the second minor amendment, as I'd indicated, is to restrict the permitted uses on the conservation and open space recreation.
Okay, thank you. Council, any comments, questions on that? Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved, the Council of Township of Muskoka Lakes amend bylaw 2020-74, and this amendment is minor in nature and does not require further public circulation and is hereby approved prior to third reading. The minor amendment will rezone portions of the retained lot from open space, private OS2 to environmentally protected EP1, and will restrict permitted uses on the severed lot to be limited to conservation and open space recreation. Any further comments? All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Third reading. Moved by Councillor Hayes, second by Councillor Jagwitz. Be it resolved, bylaw 2020-74 be read a third time and finally passed. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Comments from the public? Anybody? I think we're good. No comment. I think we're good. No impact. Now we're going to go to Maggie Macomo. Maggie Macomo. Who's got that one? Bryce?
Mr. Sharp will look after this one.
Thank you. I'm going to read the bylaw type of thing, and then I'll let you introduce the potential minor amendment. Moved by Councillor Kelly, second by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved, bylaw 2020-75 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14. Maggie Como, Cornea, Rule 4, 1944, be read a first and second time. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Minor amendment, Mr. Sharp. You have a minor amendment? I don't think we have a minor amendment. Anybody?
There is
Mr.
no
Al?
minor amendments.
No minor amendment. Thank you very much. Moving to third, Councillor Roberts, moved by Councillor Roberts, second by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved, bylaw 2020-75 be read a third time and finally passed. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, last but not least, Lane. No impacts. I don't believe we had any impacts on that one. And I don't believe we have a minor amendment on this one either. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by. Oh, there's a question. Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, I believe Lane was on Tobin Island. We asked, and that it was coming out 60 feet where it should be 50 feet. And I asked for the depth of water there and that, and we didn't get an answer on that.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. The Planning Committee raised some concerns specifically related to the boathouse length. The length was proposed at 84 feet, and there was also specific concerns related to the dry slip that was located within the width of the boathouse, and it was suggested that a revised site plan be provided to council at this meeting that showed the relocation of that slip and storage space to the rear of the boathouse. I have received correspondence from Mr. DeBoer, who is the owner's agent. He indicated that there was insufficient time to prepare a revised plan and discuss the changes with the owner. So they are going to be requesting a deferral of any decision related to this bylaw. And within the next 30 days, they hope to return with a revised proposal. There was also water depth measurements requested in the vicinity of the existing dock. So I would expect Mr. DeBoer to bring forward a revised proposal to next council meeting if this application is deferred, or the council could choose to vote on this application as it was applied.
Council, I'm assuming we want to defer this.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to defer this. Madam Clerk, you're okay with that? That's consensus. Bylaws are done. We're now going to go into closed session, I believe. And we'll go into closed and take a 2-minute break as we start closed. How's that? Everybody? So moved by Councillor Nishikawa, second by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that council in closed session convene at 4 p.m. for litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. 1, LPAT matter, and litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. 1 matter pursuant to Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001. And that is also included in our supplemental agenda item in that resolution. Correct, Madam Clerk? That is. All those in favor? Okay, we're going to turn off the outside public. We're going to go into closed, and we will sort of convene in about 3 minutes. If you need a washroom break, please feel free.